George, welcome to the Big Lab podcast. How are we doing?
It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
It is. Thank you very much for coming on. It feels a little bit strange introducing someone with the same name. I think this is the first time that's happened.
Yeah, well, my girlfriend's also a George, so
Oh,
you're in
really?
good company. Yeah, it's great. And whenever we introduce ourselves as a couple, it's like, oh, my name's George, and she's also called George. So only one name to remember. So it's actually rather convenient. But always great to meet your fellow George. George.
Funnily enough, I've got a brother called Alex and his girlfriend is also called Alex.
Oh,
So, yeah. But would you like to give yourself a quick introduction of sort of who you are and what you do for the listeners?
well, my name's George, and I run an account called TheTinMen, which is slowly expanding set of content, largely on Instagram, but also YouTube now, that talks about the precarious areas of men's health, or more broadly, men's issues. And it includes everything from male suicide, domestic violence, sexual violence, education, mental health, homelessness, drug addiction, uh, people that die at work, circumcision, like everything, you name it, it's there. The good thing about talking about men's issues is that because there's so few people that want to talk about it, it leaves a lot of topics open for me. There's lots to discuss, more than we could ever squeeze into one podcast. I'm sure your listeners will figure out before the end of the show. But yeah, I essentially, if it has a negative impact on men and boys, I want to talk about it. I don't care how unpopular it is. I'm happy to talk about it. Someone should. I mean, I work in the creative industry, so I arrived in the space 5 years ago, trying to bring an element of production value and showmanship to what is obviously a very contentious area. People call it men's rights, which is obviously a very unpopular term, but I just want to raise the profile of the many ways in which men and boys are harmed in a way that is unapologetic, but also not needlessly controversial.
I think the work that you're doing is really, really important, like you say, and the way you lay out your content is very easy on the eye and it's very easy to follow for pretty much anyone, and I think is really good. What actually got you started in that in the first place? What was the reason? What was the sort of kickstart for it?
I'm a bit of a creative polymath. I'm a bit of an addict. I just want to create all the time. I'm always daydreaming, thinking, ranting on about something. I work in the creative industry and have done for 15 years, in filmmaking primarily, but also in design, branding, animation, tone of voice, creative strategy, and then within filmmaking, every single area from pre-production concept right through to filming, camera operation, lighting, sound, that sort of stuff, but then right in directing, producing, and then right into post-production, editing, animation, color grading. So I love it. But then of course in 2020, as we all know, lockdown happened. Those in the film industry, their jobs sort of ended. There was no on-set filming, at least for the first 6 months. So I had a creative itch I needed to scratch. And simultaneously, I'd always find this area of men and boys issues, men's health, male suicide, etc., really, really interesting. Not only because of the issues themselves, but because I felt they were really misunderstood. I felt like they were wrong. They were unfairly maligned, and they needed someone to come in and do a bit of a rebrand. Someone that could talk about these issues in a way that wasn't as expected. And I thought that's something I could spend my time doing. So I set up the Tin Men essentially to try and catalogue all of the issues that I found interesting, that I felt people needed to know about. And people started following. And 76,000 followers later on Instagram, at least, I'm here. And yeah, I'm about 1,100 posts in. And like I said, I talk about a huge multitude of issues. Because I came in all guns blazing, a bit naive, I alienated myself from a lot of the big players in this space, and any chance of getting funding or any relationship with politicians, I dashed instantly, which is actually kind of great because now I get to say whatever I choose without having to worry about upsetting people. I mean, I don't want to upset people, but a lot of people in this space are very cautious about saying things in the wrong way, and I don't spend a huge amount of time worrying about that. I just try to present the facts as I see them. And yeah, so I've been wrestling with these issues for the past 5 or 6 years now, nearly 7 years. I'm just trying to find what is the cheat code to unlocking people's compassion for men and boys. So like the Office for National Statistics recently released the data on domestic violence this year, and it found 41% of domestic abuse victims are men. That's a lot higher than most people would expect. Also quite controversial, but those are the facts. It's actually even higher for intimate partner abuse, which is not the same as domestic violence, but that is an unpopular issue. So for someone like me to have that, how do I present the fact that 41% of domestic violence victims are men in this country? And that's an amazing challenge. And I've been trying to get it right for ages. And it's hard, but rewarding at the same time.
Yeah, they're very difficult conversations, like you say, to speak about. But I think you always come through with them with an evidence-based approach. And it's some of the topics that we're going to touch on in this podcast. But I've been following you for a little while on Instagram now. However, it's only really the past week we've actually spoke. And it's on the back of your post that you put up about the double standards of sex toys between men and women that I shared, because there was a hilarious Reddit comment within that post that just had me that I had to share. And I'll read the comment, which was, when a girl buys a vibrator, it's seen as a bit of naughty fun. But when a guy orders a 240-volt Fuckmaster Pro 5000 blow-up latex doll with a 6-speed pulsating vagina, a elasticized anus with a non-drip semen collection tray, together with an optimal built-in realistic orgasm scream surround sound, he's called a pervert.
Just the drip tray bit. I'm like, oh my God.
It's horrible. It's horrible. But I mean, that's hilarious.
I mean, that was obviously a great post, I think. I mean, it's an interesting issue. I mean, I would say that's one of the more less impactful problems that impacts men.
Yes.
But what I'm looking at is how we seem to stigmatize sex toys more for men than we do for women, which is kind of obvious. I think we all know that. Yeah. And there were loads of people sharing their stories. Obviously, that was a joke. That wasn't real. But there's a study recently that basically tested it, and they just looked at men and women, surveyed them, and then measured their level of disgust and towards sex toys and people using them depending on their sex. And both men and women were more disgusted at male sex toys than women's sex toys, which lines up, I think, with what intuitively we know. And it's an interesting double standard. It's not something I care so much about. I'm not going to die on that hill, but it's just, I don't know, more light-hearted content to present to take the edge off the more serious stuff.
Yes, I think those Reddit comments definitely helped within that one.
Yeah. There was another comment I put in where this is a real story. And it was that one guy said, at my school when I was growing up, some guy found a girl's vibrator in a bag, and he got absolutely so seriously told off and almost suspended. Actually, yeah. And she was seen as a victim, which she is. It's not right for him to do that, and it's right that he's punished. And then he said the following year, a boy of a similar age had a fleshlight found in his bag, and it was the complete opposite, where he was the problem, and they even considered putting him on a sex offenders register. And I was like, well, here's two students both bringing sex toys to school, both being found out, and yet she's seen as a victim, which she is, of bullying, and then he's seen as a predator to the point of considering putting him on a sexual offences register, which will obviously live with him for the rest of his life. So an interesting double standard. And lots of interesting comments in that one.
An interesting double standard, and also a strange thing to take to school. But
it's like, it must have been that's crazy. I mean, I have no idea why you do that either way, but yeah.
So going into the main bulk of the podcast, then, first of all, what do you think it means to be a man in 2026?
Oh, I mean, whatever it is to be a man, it seems to be the last people we ask that question are men. You see, that's a conversation that's often gate-kept by a lot of women. I don't know what it is to be a man. I would like to see a conversation that broadens how we value men in the same way as we've had that conversation around women. Like women, I've seen a renaissance of women who have found and capitalized upon many different areas of purpose and meaning. Like what is a woman is broadening in a really beautiful way outside of being a mother and a wife to becoming an independent person in their own right in many ways. But we haven't seen that same exploration for men. Like we seem to value men too often, in my opinion, on their ability to provide and protect and as sort of earners and breadwinners. And I think that's an important part of being a man, although the ability to be a sole breadwinner is more and more difficult for men because we're sharing our work with women now, quite rightly. And the whole 1960s archetype that we look to for men, like some sort of sitcom dad, is so increasingly out of reach for men that we desperately need to find. We need to establish what is it to be a man. And I think whatever the answer is to that question, we need to have that conversation without fear or having to look over our shoulder or, quieten our voice, because it is just somehow an unpopular thing. But we can't even seem to ask that question because a lot of men are afraid to give an answer to it. And for that reason, I don't know what it is to be a man. If I'm honest, I'm afraid I don't.
There's no sort of blueprint anymore, is there?
No, but I just
like
think
you say,
there's certainly more to being a man than the ability to have a job and a big salary and a shiny car. Like, I've had some of those things in my life. I talked about my life as a filmmaker 5 years ago, and I did all right. I made fairly decent money. I traveled the world. I worked with some really cool clients. And since then, I've stepped back from that, and I run TheTinMen at a massive loss, and I've never been happier. I've never felt more purpose and meaning in my life. I've never been more surrounded by amazing people. And I think that was as I realized there's more to life than money. Like, I think of my dad. He was extremely successful professor, and he spent his whole life building his career to the point of being one of the world's leading experts in psychology. And I don't know if it made him happy. I think he spent so long on his job, he didn't spend a huge amount of time with me and my sister because he's too busy working. And ultimately, when he retired, he didn't have the connection my mum has with us now. And I think he paid the price, a big price. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to spend my next 50 years of my life building a career only to retire and realize that the ticket I bought didn't give me, the jackpot I'd hoped for. So I'm trying to find a greater sense of meaning in other things that aren't, like I said, money. And whatever that is, that's what a man is to me, at least.
I think you find that sort of thing with most people who go for the successful career path is the sacrifices, the family life, the home life in pursuit of the higher wage. And I personally work in the corporate world, so I'm a commercial project manager full time. I've seen that sort of individual climbing the ladder, and work is their life essentially. At some point, you sort of hit a point in management where that is you are non-stop working.
Well, I mean, I'm only making assumptions, but I'm sure you make okay money doing that. And now you're creating a podcast after work. This is almost 6 p.m. So you're filming this after you've knocked off. And I'm sure this work probably is more meaningful for you in some ways than your actual job, despite paying you £0. I mean, so I imagine it make money from this.
100%.
Nor
I
do
don't
I.
make a single penny. No.
Nor do I. But I make things that are much more important, like friends, such as yourself. And like, that's to get a message from men and women and mothers and fathers and so many different people that I get all the time. That is worth more than money in some ways. Obviously, I can't pay the mortgage with it, but there's more to life than money. And part of realizing that is what makes a man.
Yeah, 100%. And like, I've had the question throughout my career, sort of, where do you see yourself in 5 years, 10 years time? And I always say, I'm going to push myself as far up the ladder as possible to the point where, one, the salary doesn't match the hours, and two, it starts impacting on my personal time, because eventually I want kids, and I don't want to be the dad that sat on calls at 7 o'clock at night whilst I've got a kid at the side of my desk sort of asking me to play with them.
Yeah.
Like, that's not the life I want.
No,
so
good.
It's kind of that, is it the parable of the Mexican fisherman? I think that Chris Williamson's mentioned a few times.
Yes. Yeah, I love that stuff.
Yeah.
I can't quite remember it, but I remember being profoundly impacted. And then I clearly forgot what it is. But it was something like, a Mexican fisherman spent his entire life learning to fish, so when he retired, he could spend time with his children.
Yeah, basically, like an American businessman comes along and says you should hire people, get a warehouse, sell it, and then by the end of it, basically, you can retire and fish and go back to your family all day, which was the actual thing he was already doing.
Yeah, I mean, I get that already. I mean, I already have that. I live that life, and I'm privileged to be able to do that right now. So, I mean, I am very rich in that sense. But yes, the Mexican fisherman parable is brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. So just leading on from that then, we're obviously aware that male suicide is one of the leading causes of death in men under 50. And I see a lot online that we try and approach mental health in a way that psychologically is suited to women.
Mm.
What do you think we can do to change that in order to help men's mental health?
Well, I always think I want to draw a line between mental health and male suicide. A lot of men who are considering suicide don't see themselves as having a mental health problem at all. And the framing of suicide as a mental health issue for a lot of men, they don't appreciate and they don't identify with, because they don't think the problem they're going through is in here. They don't think they don't got like some sort of chemical imbalance to be medicated away. It's not some internalized problem or like a toxic male mindset or other such nonsense. It's something very real. A lot of it is related to their work. Except, for example, a lot of it's related to financial pressures and debt. A lot of it's related to their relationships. I'm doing a post right now about the impact a relationship breakdown has on a man, male suicide, and like I think it's let me just bring it up. I don't want to get this wrong. Male suicide and relationship breakdown is something that a lot of research has been going into. There's a new meta-analysis that synthesized 75 peer-reviewed papers across 30 countries with 106 million men, which is like an unheard of scale
It's a
of
lot. It's a
research.
lot of men.
And it found that divorced men are nearly 3 times more likely to die by suicide, and separated men are nearly 5 times more likely to die by suicide than married men. So something about going through a divorce or separation has a massive impact on a man's suicide rates. And if you look at young men especially, young separated men, 8.6 times more likely to die than a
Wow.
married man of the same age. 8.6 times. And then, so separated men are twice as likely more likely to die by suicide than divorced men. So there's something about the immediate aftermath of a breakup. There's some sort of window of risk that a man goes through immediately after breakup, but divorced men are still at increased rate. That's just one cause. And then that comes with a lot of different things. It's not just a divorce. It's the fact that maybe you're losing half your assets. You might be paying for family court fees. That obviously impacts you in a financial way. That places you into debt. Of course, a lot of men in relationships that are breaking down, they're losing child custody. Child custody battles, family courts, massive problem. Of the relationship's gone itself. You're losing a huge emotional support, probably your primarily emotional support. So there are many different things. Then obviously there's intimate partner violence, which is a big part of separation, abuse, sexual violence. There are huge numbers of things that cause male suicide that are moderated by mental health. So it's a series of issues that are placing stress and pain onto men, and then it's the inability to properly regulate that pain. So it's the inability to process that pain at a fast enough rate where you're sort of emptying that pain out. There's a famous saying where the author of suicide is pain. And I think that's quite a powerful way of framing it. And it's not, like I said, it's not some sort of mental problem. Although secondary to a lot of these things, you will have mental health issues because obviously those are caused by being in debt, going
Yeah.
through divorce, losing a child. You're going to have things that look like mental health issues, but primarily that's the relationship breaking down. That's the problem there in that particular instance. Another researcher friend of mine who looks into suicide describes suicide as a symphony of sorrow. She says every single person has their own symphony of sorrow. And a symphony, if you look at an orchestra, you don't say that's the violinist in the second row, third from the back, or whatever. It's all of the instruments, all at the same time, playing a singular symphony. So anyone that says male suicide is caused by X, Y, or Z is ultimately lying to you. It's not one thing. It's
So
many
is
different
everything
things.
stacking up on top of
Yeah,
each other?
it's everything. It's basically, the way I've heard it talked about is that inside everyone's head is a tank, and inside that tank is pain. What happens is that someone has so much pain going into that tank, they can't, and then another pipe in the bottom, they can't actually empty out the pain. That the pressure inside of that tank that is not being emptied fast enough causes a suicidal event. What that pain is are many different things. It's not one thing in particular, but it's the immense pain placed onto men, plus the inability to regulate it, plus also coping mechanisms that are often damaging in their own right. So we're talking about alcohol, drugs, porn, sex, gambling, like addictions that you might think are helping you regulate that pain. You might be under pain and you're, I'm going to go and gamble, or I'm going to go and drink, or I'm going to have fast food. That might help in the short term, but you're only increasing that pain long term.
And then you
So
lead to
it's
financial issues as well, don't you?
exactly,
With
yeah.
those, yeah.
But the important thing I want people to realize is it's not one thing, and it's not some sort of internalized problem, or not primarily that, and therefore it can't be solved by men talking more. Like the solution to male suicide is through structural changes. Looking at how do we support men during a breakup? How do we support men who are fighting for children? Well, how do we look into family courts to make sure men are getting treated fairly? How do we protect men who are being abused or have experienced sexual violence or had first childhood experiences in life or are in debt or whatever else? Those are the questions rather than endlessly telling men to talk, because it's not a simple answer. And people seem to think there is a simple answer. A lot of people think it's toxic masculinity, and that's the one and only answer, not just for one man's suicide, but for all men's suicides. And it's just an obscene, offensive suggestion that is simply not true. So it's not a great thing for podcasts, because a lot of podcasts want, simple answers, but there is no simple answer to male suicide, sadly.
I
But
didn't
whatever.
expect a simple answer. It's a very complex topic, like
But we
you
know,
said.
but we know it's getting worse in the UK. 2025 was the worst year yet this century. So it shows that for all of the good work or the kind words that have gone into male suicide, lots of hashtags and slogans and days of awareness, and it is becoming more normal to talk about it. It hasn't brought the rates down. The rates are still going up. So it's about time we looked at a new solution that recognized what I talked about, where it's not primarily a mental health issue. Suicide for many men, sadly, is a solution-based outcome in its own right, where they simply don't see a way out of whatever problem they're in. So suicide becomes an answer. And it's an awful way of seeing it, but that's what this data is telling us.
What do you think the reason for it continually increases is? If there is all this work going in that's, to be blunt, not working.
Oh, I mean, I think a lot of it, everyone's feeling the economic well, not everyone, a lot of people, both male and female, are feeling the economic hardship of the UK right now. Cost of living, joblessness, unemployment, costs are going up, bills are going up. I think that impacts everyone, but because of the expectations on men to be a provider, I think they are paying a disproportionate price for that. I think in many ways we allow women to fail in that area more so than we do men. So the economic conditions, suicide correlates heavily with socioeconomic group, and also with the north of England and Scotland, where there's higher levels of poverty. That has a massive impact on suicide. Plus, obviously, more gambling, more drinking, more drug use. I think, obviously we've seen a huge change in the cost of living and the economy, and I think that's a massive part of it. Plus, I always talk about domestic violence. It's something I talk about a lot. We're not helping men. We're not adequately supporting male victims. That 41% I talked about, they're not really supported. We don't even recognise them as unique victims in their own right. That's obviously going to be a problem. And then you mentioned earlier about intervention strategies not being particularly helpful. There was a study in the University of Manchester a few years ago that found 91% of middle-aged men who died by suicide did seek help. So these are men that did talk, did open up, did go to services, mental health crisis centres, called, frontline care and stuff like that, and they still died. More than 9 in 10. So,
But that was what I was saying before in the initial question, was that I see a lot online that it's more psychologically suited to women in these situations. Is there something that we need to change within that help so that number of 9 out of 10 drops dramatically?
I'm confident to say yes. I think that's fair to say yes. What that is, I don't know. I don't know because I'm not qualified. I'm not a psychologist.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't think it is necessarily a psychological issue, but I don't think I'm qualified anyway. And also, we're just not having that question. A bit like we don't get to talk about what is it to be a man. We also don't get to pose the question, are suicide intervention strategies and is therapy in general more suited to women? And I think yes. I think the facts are given you already. We know 80% of therapists are women. We know men are very highly unlikely to seek therapy, a lot more unlikely than women. So if men are the ones that are going through these issues, but they're also less likely to seek therapy, maybe we should ask, is the therapy failing? Like, it's not necessarily men are failing at therapy or failing to open up. It's that the services that are out there, men just don't seem to want to go to. Some research from Australia finds 50% of men who sought therapy, so they went to therapy, they opened up, they did their bit, they quit. 50% of them did. And the number one reason was I didn't have a connection with a therapist. And then the second highest response was therapy didn't work. So those sort of tell you that maybe there's more to it than men aren't opening up. And
I
it
think
makes sense.
that's quite interesting because I've never personally been to therapy, but within work, I've had mentors and things like that. And
Mm.
quite often they haven't worked because we've not really connected, because they're not the right person to help me drive my career. And I guess that would be the exact same in a situation for therapy. If you've not got the right person that can help you and the way you are and your personality, then it's not going to work, is it? You're
Mm.
not going to be as engaged. So,
Well, if you
yeah.
think about, if I just explain to you, probably the most at-risk group to suicide, it would be a young to middle-aged white man living in northern England who's not in a relationship, working in construction probably. And if you think about the average therapist is often a white woman, I don't think that scaffolder or construction worker would want to go and speak to her in some sort of clinical environment in a face-to-face way. That's just not how men want to open up and talk about their issues. Not to
Was,
not to
was
go on.
someone in that sort of construction background as well is most likely going to be like a lad's lad that,
Yeah,
is maybe a bit boisterous and, they go down the pub and watch the footy with the lads.
which is fine.
That's what they're used to speaking to. If you're
Yeah.
going to speak to a woman that has no sort of common interest, you're not going to have that connection, are you, to then help you forward?
Well, I met a guy the other week called Scott, and he set up Proper Blokes Club, and he is helping those men now, probably literally now. Like the Proper Blokes Club is a London-based charity, I believe, and it's essentially about a dozen or so walks all over London where blokes, proper blokes, like working class lads, big lads, get together and go on walks. And I went on one. It was fucking great. Like it's
Great.
just, and I was like, this is so different to what we're told therapy looks like, where you are going to a clinical environment. You're going to sit down in a clinical space, kind of sanitized, and it's going to be a woman you're talking to. Whereas this was a dozen working class lads having a walk, getting out, having that shoulder to shoulder time, that camaraderie, and they're chatting, they're opening up, they're doing everything, but it's just not the same as what we think therapy is. And I promise you, those men are being so much better served than they would if they went to the NHS and paid whatever amount of money for therapy. And it's like, we've got to come to the realization that in an industry that's dominated by women, which the psychological industry is, like I said, 80% of therapists, I think 85% of trainees are women. Naturally, that's not going to suit men in the same way that the financial industry, when that was 80% men, that wasn't suited to women either. And I totally agree with that too. Like, we have no problem acknowledging a workplace run by men, overwhelmingly run by men, will likely be more suited to men. That's just a benign statement. I agree with that. However, we need to apply that now to the psychological industry and ask, if it's dominated by women, does that mean men are falling through the cracks? And does that answer why so many men are dying by suicide? A little bit, one answer. And does that answer why so few men go to therapy, and why the men who do go to therapy think it doesn't work and feel like they don't have a connection with their therapist? That's the problem. The problem is, I don't know. They sound like good questions to me, but we don't get to ask these questions because some people find them offensive, which they are not. So it's not, we don't have studies really on that. There's a few studies that are good and do suggest what I'm saying to be true, but there's no meaningful conversation more broadly because people are too afraid. So it's left down to people like you and I, no offense, neither of us are really qualified to
No,
speculate about it. And
no.
that's better than nothing, but there needs to be a serious review into, are men falling through the cracks of intervention strategies? If 9 in 10 men who die by suicide are seeking help and still killing themselves, I think yes. I think surely yes.
So this
So
is the
yeah.
thing I find quite a lot, is that when men's issues are brought up, people seem to think we're taking away from women's problems, which it's absolutely not. There's enough space for both to be spoken about. It's just uplifting one that's clearly got an issue, and that is men's suicide. And men's therapy, like you've mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, I I think that's a crazy suggestion that doing more for women means doing less for men, or doing more for men means doing less for women. That's not
Exactly.
how it works. And like, what
No.
does that mean? Like, I don't think I'm the one that should be talking for women. When it comes to women's issues, I'm a listener. I sit down and I shut up and I listen to what they've got to say. And my life has been enriched so much. I've learnt so much from listening to women talk about their issues. I don't think I should be doing that because I'm not a woman. I'm a man. So I
Yeah.
will talk about men, to men, for men, and that's fine. That doesn't mean I'm taking away from women. I wouldn't be
No.
talking about women if I wasn't doing this, mainly because I'm not the person to be speaking for women. So
Exactly.
it's a fucking stupid people that say that. I've got less and less time for them. And ultimately, we all benefit from having healthy men, happy men who are alive, first of all, and functioning in a world where they feel seen and supported and they have help that is adequate and suitable to them, designed for their needs. And I think it's quite clear. There are people in the space that will bring up these issues to undermine women,
Yeah.
and will be doing that to minimize. And there's no denying that. But I think far more the people that I work with, at least, are just trying to stop men from killing themselves. For fuck's sake! Like,
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, it's the biggest risk of my life. Like, what am I
Yeah.
not
And
allowed to talk about the biggest risk of my life?
exactly. If you've got an issue with that, then there's an issue with you
Yeah,
yourself.
I don't want to. Yeah, I don't know why we have to entertain people that say that. It's like you
Yeah.
are just not. You're so uncharitable. What you're saying is ridiculous. I think more and more people know that's stupid thing to say, and ironically, I feel like they are the ones that are undermining the conversation towards men. Like,
Yeah. 100%. But just going back to the walks you were talking about, I've got
mm,
a mate who runs a community hike once a month, and it's for men and women, and that's really good. Like, there's a load of us that get out each month, and
amazing.
literally just go and explore, and how much better you feel for doing it. But not only that, there's people on the walks that have had previous issues with alcohol and drugs, and it has been a route to them sort of staying clean and sober.
Yeah.
And I just going, there was a clip I remember hearing, and there's every chance it was Chris Williamson, with men opening up. They are more likely to do it sort of side by side than they are face to face, was the basic gist of it. I
Yeah.
think
So
there's some science behind it.
uh, there's not enough science. Like,
Right.
I'm always giving question marks to answers, which I fucking hate. Not because I don't know, and not because I have not tried to find out, but because there's no research.
Yeah.
I'm talking a lot on this in this area, talking a lot on intuition. For things like domestic violence, there's loads of data. We can talk about that later. But in terms of what Chris is talking about, which is something I've talked to him about, we talk a lot offline. So him and I are a little bit symbiotically linked in that way. But what he's talking about is shoulder to shoulder time, and the idea that men don't necessarily open up in a face to face way, a bit like we are, where you are sat in a therapeutic environment and you are talking face to face to someone. Men prefer shoulder to shoulder time, where it's a bit of a flatter hierarchy. It's less regimented. It's not in a clinical environment. It's not one to one. It's not with a woman. It's with normally not just a man, but a group of men, where you can actually see other men. You can role model your behavior on there, so you can see, oh, this guy's talking about something I've experienced. So is this guy. So is this guy. Now I'm going to
Hmm.
speak. There's no expectations to talk, and there's no hierarchy, and that's called shoulder to shoulder time. Normally with some sort of physical activity built in. Walking is a great one. But I've seen like allotments. I've seen like men fixing a motorbike together, going on a drive, walking the dogs. Men's Sheds is excellent charity, particularly for older men, lonely men, where different workshops all over Canada, UK, America, Australia, and you just go for free. You're given some tools and some toys, normally from the local children, and you fix shit for people. And I'm telling you, a men's shed with half a dozen men fixing toys for local kids will do so much more for their mental health than if they'd gone and been prescribed an SSRI or gone to traditional talk therapy. That's shoulder to shoulder time. It's quite literally side by side or shoulder to shoulder, and it's an alternate to face time.
Do you think it's because it's less intense? You're not staring someone
Yeah,
directly in the eye. It's like you're almost airing your thoughts because you might be doing something. You're speaking about your
yep,
issues, but the person you're speaking to is over there, so it's less formal in a sense. Do you think that could be the
yeah.
reason why?
Well, I mean, I've
Whereas I
worked in
think, um,
You're exactly right. That's definitely a big part of it. I mean, I worked in documentaries. My filmmaking area is documentary, so I would be the person interviewing people as you are now. Often, I'm interviewing people that are not professionals. 99% of the time, I'm not. And some of them are very nervous, especially when there's cameras on them and lights and me, I don't know who the hell I am. Hi. But if I'm like, you know what, let's cut cameras, let's go for a walk, suddenly they're just the most eloquent person I could ever hope. And then the trick is to try and bring that back.
Yeah,
sometimes you pretend not to be recording, but we secretly are. And
yeah,
that's amazing. Like if you're struggling to get a man to talk to you about something that he finds difficult, if you go for a walk, not only is it a physical exercise that helps, but it's also, like you said, it's just not looking straight into their face. Like this is not. I'm surprised a lot of women must find that difficult as well. But just side by side, all going for a drive is good. Where you're side by side, you're both looking straight forwards. You're not, like this, looking into his eyes.
yeah.
Massively helpful. So yeah, if a guy's not opening up, I promise, if you go for a drive or go for a walk or cook dinner together, things will change, and he will open up a lot more. And that's for the reason you described.
Moving into the male loneliness, then
Mm.
there was a report. I think it was it Robin Dunbar did a report on male
Hmm.
loneliness and
Yeah.
found that men needed 2 guys nights per week. What
Yeah.
what what do you think causes this loneliness epidemic to happen in the first place?
Loneliness isn't about being with people. You could be in a room full of 100 people and still feel chronically lonely. Or you could be on your own and not feel lonely at all. People seem to think that the more people, the less loneliness, but it's not as simple as that. It's about feeling unseen. It's about not having your needs met. It's about not being understood and feeling isolated. That's essentially what loneliness is. Um, But again, we don't know. My good friend Susie Bennett, who's a male suicide researcher, she put together the first agenda ever done on male suicide to essentially try and fill in some of these question marks to find out, well, what are the key questions we need to ask and answer if we are going to bring that extraordinarily high rate down. And she asked hundreds of lived experience experts, which are suicidal men and bereaved families, plus maybe a dozen international clinical experts from many countries, and they came back with a set of priorities that they voted on. The number one priority was loneliness and isolation, and it was endorsed by 98% as essential or very important to understanding male suicide. So we don't know. We have found out that loneliness could well be the most important associated risk factor to male suicide. But as for what is loneliness and how do you bring it down, in an academic way, it's difficult to answer that question. Or at least I don't know. But I do find so much reassurance in these amazing community groups, such as the one by your friend, and Proper Blokes Club, and Talk Club, and Men's Sheds, like loads of amazing charities all over the country. They're everywhere. I promise you, there was one for you, not far away, and they're free, and they are fucking excellent, really good. And they are doing the hard work now. Those things do a huge amount to help with loneliness, because they not only put you with other men, but also men that probably understand what you're going through because they too are lonely, or they too are struggling. But what loneliness is from an academic point of view, I couldn't answer that question yet again, because that's another question that we don't get to ask or answer. And that Robin Dunbar study is a great example of that, where I'm not so interested in the results, but it found guys need 2 guy nights a week to feel for their health and to reduce loneliness. That doesn't mean going to the pub, by the way. That just means a phone call, playing some games, maybe, but having a chat, like going for a walk, maybe going to the pub. But my point is, if you scroll down to the comments of that study, in any post you saw, the amount of whining and anger and hostility towards it, all these people joking about it. Oh, these men, boo-hoo. These are men in shitty relationships, or women need 7 nights a week, or why don't you just break, like all these horrible things said about it. And that's the problem. That's why that could have been a meaningful conversation about loneliness and how might guy nights help men feel less lonely and therefore reduce male suicide? But we never got to have that conversation because all of the oxygen was taken up by the most bitter, resentful, most immature bunch of arseholes you could ever hope to meet. And they just totally
Yep.
hijacked the conversation. And I was like, fuck you. Like, fuck you. like I said, suicide's the biggest risk to my life and your life and the life of every young man under 50. Isolation and loneliness might well be the biggest contributing factor to that. And we can't even talk about it. That you're taking away the antidote to the biggest risk to my life through your stupid jokes and comments. And that's a problem. That force, that negative, hostile force, a corrosive force that endlessly belittles men and boys' issues, particularly loneliness. That is something I'm battling every day, and it makes my life so much more difficult. So yeah,
It's like I was saying before, when like the male problems get brought up, it's almost as if we're taken away from other problems, but it's also where you obviously hear that term that we all grew up with, was man up, which is kind of the phrase that is causing most of our problems. And by belittling men's issues, it's not going to help the cause in the long run, like at all.
no, I mean, well, it's even more paradoxical because we deprive men, or we stigmatize men's spaces and their attempts to talk to the men, like men's networks, men's groups, whatever. I mean, I've tried to set up men's groups and it's always ended badly through hostility. And then those men who now no longer have a group to go to have to then go home and speak to what was normally their partner, who is now the main carrier of that emotional burden. And then we have a second set of jokes for that. And we have this whole concept of man keeping, which is the idea that women are unpaid therapists for men, for lack of a better term. And there's truth to that. But that is just a consequence of all of this anger around men trying to help each other and self-organizing. I tried to help set up a men's network at Loughborough University, Loughborough Students' Union, to go alongside a women's network. So there's a women's network, and then we were trying to set up a men's network to do this, talks and discussion groups and presentations, and there was going to be a hiking society part of it. Didn't even get one session. As soon as it was announced, it got absolutely obliterated online. And the university, who were really supportive of it, by the way, very supportive, the Student Union, as soon as the backlash started, they cancelled it. So now we have dozens of men who otherwise would have gone to those groups, maybe hundreds of men, who knows, that can no longer access that. And they're all going to go home to partners or no one. And they're going to have to now lean on their partners for that emotional burden when they would have otherwise hopefully found some sort of support at the men's network. So for people that talk about man's keeping in that way are just complaining about the consequences of their own decisions. So we need to stop vilifying men's groups and understand that it's just men walking dogs, playing ping pong, having a laugh. Like it's not nefarious. They're not getting together to work out how to oppress women. It's a normal part of being a man. Like it's just as important as women having access to women's groups, because I don't think women understand. I don't think men can understand women like another woman, and that's why it's important for women to have their own space.
Yes.
I wouldn't want to close a women's group. I don't think a men's group should be closed down, because I think it's important to be seen by those like us. That's not
No,
a controversial
100%
thing to
agree.
say. That's totally fair.
Yep.
There's nothing wrong with that. And I hate people seem to want to apologize for saying that, but there's something special about men spending time with other men, just as special as women spending time with other women. And there's nothing to apologize for, and we shouldn't be afraid of it.
Well, I'll be honest, last year I struggled a little bit because my football team folded in Christmas 2024. So I basically went from seeing the same 15 to 20 lads twice a week playing football. We had training and then a game. Sometimes we'd have a couple of pints after the game on a weekend. So you're having a laugh, and then all of a sudden I've got this hole in my diary. I'm not seeing those same lads twice a week. And it was actually until August, towards the back end of last year, me and the lads went for this random day sesh. One of the lads lives in a small town called Winsford in the northwest, which is a bit further away from where we're all from. We just decided, right, we're going to go to this random old man's pub, basically in the middle of nowhere.
Good.
And obviously we had no expectations for the day, and we genuinely had one of the best days that we've ever had out. Like, no expectations. We had a great laugh. We were playing darts, watching the football, and I literally got home and went, that is one of the best days out I've ever had. And it was just because a group of lads got together, had a completely unplanned day,
Yeah.
and just had a general laugh together. Like,
Yeah. I love that. I do that every now and again. A lot of my friends who grew up in the Midlands, they're really jealous of all the food I get access to in London. So every now and again, and maybe every few months, they'll come down and we'll just eat all the food we want. We'll go around London, we'll just eat food. We'll do activities. We'll go karting. We'll go bowling. We'll play laser. We'll do VR, which is incredible, by the way. And it's fucking great. In the summer, we
yeah.
cycled around the south of London on line bikes, just doing like a line bike tour. And the impact of my mental health was immeasurable. So
Yeah.
I'm glad you did that, and I really hope you do it again.
Oh, I said we need to make this a yearly thing, but at the time I was struggling because I went through probably a good 2 to 3 month spell of burnout with just being overly busy with work. I was traveling a lot with work. I was trying to keep up the hiking. I was trying to keep up with the podcast. I had so much just on top of me, and I got to the point where I just was barely going to the gym. I couldn't be bothered doing anything. And then this sort of day came up, and it just kickstarted me back into getting into a routine.
Awesome. Well, if it's any consolation, there's a lot of men in your position that feel exactly as you do, George. I mean, you're certainly not alone.
No.
And I really hope not every year. You should do it more often than that. I feel like that's too long a wait, isn't it? I don't want to do that every couple of months.
Yeah, we said at least once a year.
Yeah.
The thing is, this year's the year of the 30th, so we're seeing each other quite a lot at the moment with 30th birthday parties.
Good. I'm glad. I mean, I have a more depressing story than that. I did a podcast last year, and it was an in-person podcast, and I told that story of Loughborough Student Union closing down the men's network. And then when we finished, one of the crew comes running over to me, which happens quite often now. It's very nice. And he's like, "Oh my God, I loved it. I want to tell you a story about my experience of a student union doing that." And he was from York, University of York, or was an alumni. And I remember reading in the news, it's about 10 years ago, the University of York wanted to have an International Men's Day event to celebrate International Men's Day, which I think is the 19th of November. And it was the same as what we wanted to do at Loughborough University, where it was like, we're going to talk about men and boys, we're going to talk about loneliness, we're going to talk about mental health, we're going to create a positive space for men. And University of York, very supportive of International Men's Day event. Same thing happened. The backlash. And all of this guy's friends were really excited to have this event. That's for them. And the University of York cancelled it. And then the following day, one of his friends killed himself. And I'm not saying the two are linked, but it's sad how they would deprive a man of that opportunity to go to an event. Now, it's just for him, and an opportunity for him to speak to men in his situation. And then the day after it's cancelled, he takes his own life. And it's like those stories are closer than you think. Like, that's why I said, George, that there's a lot of men going through what you just told me. I know I have. And that's a very normal way to respond.
I'm aware of at least 3 people that have taken their own lives fairly close to me.
I'm sorry. Yeah, that's dreadful. And I hope we don't wait another year. It doesn't have to be quite a big event. I mean, you just have group calls, you go for a walk. It doesn't have to be a big, what you described. That does sound good as an annual event at least, but it could be anything. It doesn't have to be that.
Yeah, of course.
And to quote Chris Williamson, let me give you a bit of Chris Williamson advice.
Go for it.
He said, if you think of someone in your day, send them a text. And he said, if tomorrow I'm walking the dogs and I think of our podcast, I'll be like, I'm going to send George a message on Instagram. I'm going to be like, nothing particularly interesting. All right, mate, I was just walking the dogs and I thought about what you said and I thought I'd say hi and how you doing? That's easy. You can do that today.
Yeah, I actually did that to all the lads. I think it was Mental Health Awareness Week. I just dropped all the lads a message just saying, how's things going? If you need anything, let me know.
Yeah.
And a few of them were a bit weirded out by it. Because you're like, what? But,
I work with a lot of researchers and they try to get guys to, one of them actually told me recently that she was trying to talk to some of her male friends about loneliness, and I think maybe 5 of them in general, and they were like, "Oh no, I don't experience that. Oh, you do? That's lame. No way." And then two of them, like a few hours afterwards, text her and were like, "Oh, just so you know, I do feel lonely, and I do feel that way, and I just didn't want to say at the time, but I've been thinking about it ever since, and I wanted to say I do feel so. I would like to have that chat again, but in private maybe." And I think more men feel it than they let on. In fact, I'm certain they do, and that's
Yeah,
down to us to destigmatize it, I think.
and not to go back to Chris Williamson again, but the whole the loneliness chapter that he speaks about, I feel like I've felt this, not to the point where I feel better than my current mates. I'm just doing things that they're not necessarily interested in or do. So,
Mm,
for instance, the podcast, quite a lot of them, quite a few of them support it, to be fair. Not all, but quite a few. And me just doing different things, I do feel a little bit lonely in that pursuit at times.
mm.
Especially when I'm obviously trying to progress in my career at the same time and I've got the podcast.
But why?
I've felt that personally at times, and I don't know why.
Why would I mean? I'm not entirely familiar with your podcast, but I'm not sure why anyone would find this unpopular. If that's what it is, they didn't like it because it's unpopular. I mean, I don't think.
I don't know if it's they don't like it. It's just
Mm,
I'm doing something that's not normal, I guess. There's not
mm.
that many people that have got a podcast. Like, I personally don't know anyone else with a podcast other than maybe one of the footy lads' girlfriends that have one. But that's about it. And I was doing the social media stuff way before people were doing it. I originally started a fitness Instagram back in college. So we're talking 12, 13 years ago. So
Mm.
as Instagram was coming up, I started a fitness Instagram account. Now every man and his dog's got a fitness Instagram account for the to keep themselves accountable. But at the time, I was ridiculed so heavily in college to the point where I deleted it, and then it got
Oh,
back to 2018, and I thought, right, stuff it, I'm going to do it. And then I started a podcast, and I had questions of like, why are you doing this? Like, no one's going to listen, no one's going to watch this, that, and the other. And I'm like, if people listen, people listen. If they don't, they don't. But I enjoy doing it, so I'm going to do it.
that's the advice I give to people that are in your position where they say, what advice would you give me starting a podcast or a blog or whatever?" And I always encourage them to try and find reward in the journey itself, even if no one listens to it, whatever. Which I know what that's like. I had that for years. I still enjoyed it because I enjoyed the process of creating the content itself. It wasn't about who sees it, if anyone sees it. I just enjoyed doing it. I liked the process, and like for podcasts, I just like talking to people, regardless of how many people listen or don't listen. And I think that's the secret. Like, it has to be for yourself, otherwise you'll never keep it up.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I kind of treated last year as year one because the previous years that I'd done the podcast, they were sort of bit part, sort of seasons. And I thought last year I'm going to really commit to it. And it's the biggest growth I'd seen in the whole time I've had the podcast. It absolutely wiped the floor with the rest of the years. And the reason I actually started the podcast, I actually never planned to do one. I originally was going to start meeting up with people that I knew from Instagram and do workout vlogs and just general vlogs.
Mm.
Obviously, lockdown hit. And then I was like, how can I still interact with these people? So I thought I'll start a podcast and I'll just generally chat with them and actually get to know them because I've spoke to them on DMs for however long. Let's have a chat on a podcast. And then it sort of grew arms and legs, and I really enjoy the process of doing it. Not a fan of the editing and scheduling content, but it's just part of the job at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
But
Good for you.
just going back to the loneliness part, do you think that it's just part of getting older where you do tend to see friends less due
Yes.
to, family commitments and job commitments and potentially moving away from your hometown?
Yeah. I
Is
mean,
that at the root
people.
cause of it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, sadly, it's easier to lose friends than it is to make them, and that only gets more true as you get older. I'm not even sure where. I mean, I'm lucky I have the Tin Men because I make lots of new friends, including today, and a lot of people don't have that. So it's hard to make friends as an adult, particularly as a guy. I mean, in fact, that applies to women too. And
Do you
yeah,
think it's
that's
hard, or do you think it's just people not looking or
but
trying?
both, both lack of time, Like, where do you typically make friends? You make friends on nights out in pubs and stuff. But eventually, when if your bedtime as an old as a 36-year-old is like 9:30 p.m., like there isn't much of a nightlife left after that. And but it absolutely does correlate with age. Like typically, both men and women lose a lot of friends as they get older, especially men. And like some of the worst data I've seen is on the suicide rates between 85-year-olds is horrendous. 85-year-old man is 15 times more likely to end his life than a woman of the same age. So
Wow.
1,500% increase in a 85-year-old man and an 85-year-old woman. A lot of that surely down to loneliness, and that's horrendous. That's what I mean. That's why I
That,
think men that age should go to men's sheds and stuff like that. But
yeah, that's one thing I've never really seen the data on. I always see the suicide stats for men under sort of 45 and 50. I've never really seen anything 50
yeah,
and beyond.
I don't know what I mean. People say it's the biggest cause of death for men under 50, and that's true. But it still kills a lot of men after that age. But unfortunately, a lot of things kill men after 50.
Yeah.
So it's not that male suicide goes away. It's just the other causes catch up. And like I said, 15 times more likely to die by suicide as an 85-year-old man. So it's not a young man's problem at all. I think in many ways it's a male problem in general, including old age. But yeah, I mean, sadly, men dying is a problem in lots of ways. In the UK, 1 in 5 men won't live to 65. And 15 men die young every hour. So how far are we now? We're almost an hour through. So 15 men
Yeah.
will have died young by
Oh.
by now. Most of his deaths are avoidable. So it's important to say that's not just suicide where men are really leading and having their lives decimated. It's more or less every single cause of death you can think of. Yeah, you're right. I think we shouldn't be talking about suicide as a young man's problem. It impacts all age groups, sadly.
Wow. And then I think you mentioned just before the toxic masculinity. One sec. Do you think the trend of toxic masculinity in itself is toxic?
Yeah.
Because I feel like
yeah.
there is toxic masculinity, but then I feel like the trend of it is bringing things in that are inherently not toxic masculinity.
Yeah, there's so much wrong with that term. I fucking hate that term. That was one of my, I guess you'd call it a red pill moment, where you just suddenly, you feel like you've just changed your mind instantly on something. And I remember reading Grayson Perry's book, I think it's called End of Men, and I was really enjoying that book. And then he just kept talking about toxic masculinity, and I got like halfway through the book. This is like 7 or 8, 9 years ago. And I was just like, I don't like this fucking term. And I just put that book in the bin, threw it away and never finished it. And I was just like, from that point on, I found it very difficult to see the term toxic masculinity as anything other than a really harmful worldview in its own right, toxic in itself. And I think it clearly disassociates the idea of masculinity, which uses a proxy for men, as being inherently problematic. I think it creates a very negative male deficit view of men. It doesn't mean anything. Like, it's so blurry and nebulous that I saw a study recently from New Zealand that's got lots of traction, sadly, and it's ascribing random terms like narcissism as being, if you're high narcissism, that means you're toxically masculine, and so many other characteristics that are not inherently about being masculine. That's just a negative thing. So
Yeah, well, you can also have a narcissistic woman. So
yeah,
it's
absolutely.
not
There are
just
plenty of
something
them.
that a man can be.
There's plenty
Yeah.
of both. There's nothing to do with being masculine.
Never heard that the phrase toxic femininity, do you?
No, and I wouldn't approve of that phrase for the
Yeah, I'm
same
not
reason.
saying that we should, but you don't hear that
But
same
it's
phrase.
just as someone, a lover of science, I've always think science is best when we're using specific terms. If we're going to look at narcissism in men, let's talk about narcissism in men. We know what narcissism is. We know what men are. Toxic masculinity is so blurry and nebulous and subjective and meaningless that it allows people to use it to push a political agenda where they just basically want to ascribe anything bad to men. I mean, there's a really good study by Carol Harrington, and she studied academia that uses the term toxic masculinity, and I think she found about 60% of papers that use that term didn't even define what it was. They didn't even bother it was just purely, to use her words, to signal disapproval of men. That's what it was all about. Let's just try and attach as many negative words to men or masculinity as possible. And then you get ridiculous articles that are like, global warming is caused by toxic masculinity, knife crimes caused by, or not recycling, or Donald Trump, or ozone layer depletion, or like having a beard, or I saw one saying films that are too long are men asserting their dominance. It was a form of manspreading. That's a Guardian
Wow.
article. And it's just
Wow.
these concepts, these nebulous, blurry political concepts that have no place in science. They allow for these stupid headlines that basically
It's almost a
everything,
cop out, isn't it? For
yeah,
not
to
being
put
able
it,
to explain themselves properly.
it's a
They
word,
just label it toxic masculinity and it's like, right, done, viral,
yeah,
sorted.
it's a word people use for lack of a better one because they lack
Yep.
the ability, they just seem to not have the vocabulary to talk about it more specifically. And then like it's never counterbalanced with positive masculinity. We never talk about the good things men do. Now, men do loads of good things disproportionately as well. One of the examples I look at is male violence, obviously, is toxic masculinity because about 80% of violent crimes in America are by men. If homicides, we talk about 90% of homicides are by men. That's toxic masculine, that's male violence. We gender that because it's mostly men, which is all right, fine, let's do that. But then we never counterbalance that with acts of heroism. And I've looked into the data on that, and about 92% of heroic acts are performed by men too. So an even higher percentage of heroic acts are by men than violent acts, even the most violent acts. We never gender that. We never say male heroism. I don't think we should because there are loads of heroic women. But if we are going to gender the bad things men do, then we need to gender the good. I would prefer to gender neither. And that 92% fact is from the Carnegie Awards, for the record, anyone wants to check it out. Carnegie Awards is a 100-year-old award that's been given out to 10,000 people in America. To get a Carnegie Award, you have to have risked your life to save a stranger. It can't be like someone saving their partner or their child from a
Yep.
building. It has to be you diving into a flood to save a randomer. And that's how you get a Carnegie Award. And they found 92% were given to men. And they are trying to give them to women too. They are looking for women, and women do get them, but it's overwhelmingly men. And we know that, and we don't gender it. So toxic masculinity is a harmful term because it so easily ascribes negative things to men. It lacks any sort of scientific merit, as we mentioned, and it's never counterbalanced with positive views of masculinity, male heroism, or anything like that. And nor is it counterbalanced with toxic femininity, as you said, and I don't think it should be. Let's just chuck that out. And I think people are chucking it out. I hate it when it's used to describe suicidal men. Male suicide is caused by toxic masculinity. And I was like, there's nothing more shameful than someone calling a suicidal man who is so desperately in need of support and love and compassion, for someone to call that man toxic. The biggest fuck you goes to that person. Fuck you. I fucking hate people that say that. And you even get clinical psychologists saying it. I know clinical psychologists who work with vulnerable men who genuinely believe that suicide and their pain is caused by them being toxic. Fuck you as well. Sorry for the language, but there's just nothing worse than that. There's nothing worse than that. Like this man's self-worth is so low, he's considering ending his life, and you think the answer is to call him toxic. You're mad.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't think it's helped by, like I said, it was a trend. There's the whole ick trend as well, isn't there, that goes around, Instagram and TikTok of women finding their icks in men. And that always comes up amongst that conversation. So it's just further driving this toxic masculinity for things that aren't toxic in the first place. And yes, it might be a joke. Even if it's a joke, it's not helping the situation of men ending their lives.
No, it's just, obviously there are some behaviours that men do more than women, and there's some negative behaviours that women do more than men. That doesn't mean we get to use terms like toxic femininity or toxic masculinity. It only drives us further apart and in a race at the bottom.
Yeah, neither gender's perfect. And like I said,
certainly not.
By uplifting one side of the thing doesn't mean you're taking away from the other.
Mm-hmm. Totally agree.
But just on the toxic masculinity, then obviously the main name that comes up when you speak about toxic masculinity is Andrew Tate. And I'm not saying I'm a supporter in any way, but do you think there's any positivity that has came from the likes of Andrew Tate and similar personas uprising on social media?
I mean, yeah, there has been some positive things. Obviously, he's going to get something right. Stop clock is right twice a day, but he is overwhelmingly a net negative for sure.
Yeah.
Like, he has said some stuff. I reckon if I took some of his certain quotes of his down, wrote that down, took out the name, or put in like Gloria Steinem or someone like that, people would be like, "That's great advice," and I might actually
I've
do
done
that
it
as a
on
bit of
Instagram
content.
before.
And like he said, I remember I got sent a video, internal video from Movember, who are leading the vanguard against Andrew Tate et al. And this was like an internal video that I shouldn't have seen, but I did get to see it, and it was great. And it was just about all of these problematic, toxically masculine men, the manosphere. And he was first out the gates, obviously. And the soundbite they used, and this is supposed to present him as a negative force on men and boys. It was him saying, men need to understand the world's not going to give you what you want. You need to go out there and get it for yourself. And I'm like, that's good.
Yeah,
That's good
that's just
advice.
uplifting him.
That's good advice. I was like, this is a man who has said he abuses women, calls women whores openly. There's videos of him beating women with his own hand. Why would you not use that? Like, that is just, he has done some horrendous things. And you've actually somehow found a soundbite that's actually kind of good advice. Like, like it's, but yeah, 99% of the time he's an idiot and worse. But
yeah, I think
every now and again.
I think part of it is an act, I would say, because obviously the act goes viral. That's exactly what he wants, and then he drives you to his Hustlers University. I would say, yeah, some of his advice has fallen on the ears of the wrong people, which has just made them more boisterous, more toxically masculine. But I think it has sort of lit a fire in the people that needed it. In some instances, you know, the people that are potentially down, and like that soundbite that you just mentioned, that will fall on the right ears and then maybe kick them into gear to go and do something with their life instead of sit around.
Yeah. I mean, I've talked to people that have said, like, Andrew Tate has, you know, got me back on my feet. And I'm like, he probably has. But the problem is that comes with a whole
It's the rest
litany
of it that comes with it,
just, And I think he does, like he says, and also like the more we react to him, the more he does it. So I'm always a big advocate of trying to ignore him. And I do think it's a bit of an act. I don't think he really thinks I think he is a bit of a cartoon villain. I know James Smith, who's a sort of a friend of mine, he met him and he said like he was doing a podcast, and before they were filming, he was just a normal bloke. And then as soon as the red button goes down, all the bravado and bombast and misogyny comes out. So it's like, how much of it was real? Ultimately, it doesn't really matter if it's real or not. He's still saying it, but he is a bit of a easy cartoon villain for which it allows us to ignore the bigger problems, which is just the lack of better role models for men and boys. That's what we should be talking about.
That was my next question, is that so many of these, as they're called, toxically masculine personas that are out there, vilified. Who are the people that men should be looking towards?
I mean, the answer to that are fathers and male role models in boys' lives. There's a massive lack of male role models in boys' lives. 1 in 4 boys in America has no father at home. 80% of teachers are women. 1 in 4 schools in the UK has not a single male teacher in it. So think about that. 1 in 4 schools in this country, not one male teacher in the whole school.
Wow.
And then obviously a huge amount, and then a huge amount of boys without dads at home. Quite a massive lack of positive male role models in the media. A lot of the sitcom dads we see are the sort of deadbeat dads, clowns, oafs, you know, the Homer Simpson, Peter Griffin, Howe, whoever else. And then I don't think that's necessarily part of the solution. So, I mean, when people ask me for role models, I just think we need more dads, more father figures, not necessarily a father, but like it could be a stepdad. And then more male teachers too, good ones. It's not like a podcaster or TV star I'm going to recommend to you. Although I did have this conversation with my girlfriend last week when we were watching the latest David Attenborough TV show based in London. And it's just like, you cannot watch David Attenborough and not be like, that he is such a wonderful man. So David Attenborough, get watching him. He's just such a kind, sweet soul. And he's just obviously, his reputation precedes him. So, but mostly dads, I think, is what we need.
Do you think that's also causing an issue? Like you mentioned, 1 in 4 schools only have no male teachers in. Do you think that then also links in with the therapy side of things then as well?
Yeah.
where potentially boys in school aren't being able to connect with the teachers in school. And I think there's statistics around women outperforming men quite heavily now in schools and university in terms of degrees.
Yeah, it's so funny because yes, and it's amazing how you're you don't know that. No offense to you, but I think most people don't know that. But absolutely, boys are behind in education at every stage of education in more or less every Western country, and have been for about 3.5 decades. It's people are, oh, apparently boys are slightly behind. I'm like, no, they're fucking miles behind and have been for as long as you've been alive. For as long as I've been alive, they've been behind.
Yeah.
And many reasons for that. Many reasons. A lot of it's down to the way in which education is set up is more suitable to girls than it is to boys. A lot of that's for the same thing that you pointed out about a therapeutic space and a psychological industry that's set up and run by women is often more suitable to other women. Same with education. 80% of teachers are women. Um, that's that's naturally going to lead to a learning environment that's more suitable to girls. And that's why we need more male teachers. Uh, I think male teachers have been found to be less likely to problematize a boy's bad behavior. And that's because they can see the bad behavior as through their own eyes. They can see that
Yeah.
naughty boy inside of them. I was a bit of a naughty boy. I was quite cheeky. I answered back. It was just a bit of an arsehole. And I would recognize a boy like me like so much easier than I think a female teacher would. In the same way that I'm sure the issues a young girl is going through, I will totally miss, but a female teacher would probably see it a lot more than I would. Nothing wrong with saying that. But the way we educate, increasingly so, which is usually based on long periods of quiet reading time, is so not suitable for any child, to be honest, but specifically for boys, even more so. Where boys,
Yeah.
we all know what it's like to be a
We
boy.
need to be
We all
doing something,
want to
don't
be
we?
fucking. I'm awful for podcasts because I'm always like just moving around. I want to be doing stuff. I want to be picking, and you can imagine what I was like as a teenager. Fucking hell. Like, I am not going to sit down. I am not going to be reading anything. I still struggle to read books now. And
Yeah. I'm similar.
that's why we need PE, which is
Yeah.
disappearing. We need more vocational learning,
Practicals in science as well.
practicals, more PE, more male teachers, um, more like coursework based stuff. And there's loads of evidence where boys are just marked down of the same cognitive ability as girls. So a boy and a girl,
Yeah.
equal intelligence, are marked down when it comes to teacher assessments because the teacher has a grading bias. Both male and female teachers do this, by the way, against boys because of boys' bad behavior. They mark boys down not because they're less intelligent, but for non-cognitive abilities, they call them, which is basically bad behavior. And yeah, you can see that as bad behavior, but I don't see it as bad behavior. I see it as a boy that's not interested or bored or disengaged or frustrated acting up as I did. There's much better studies with huge samples, not even studies, but real life events. We talked about COVID. As you know, during COVID, all exams were cancelled in the UK. They were all cancelled. All grades are based on teacher assessments. So now we
Yep.
see a really great opportunity. We're taking away an objective measure of raw intelligence, i.e. an exam, where you're either right or you're wrong. And now we're going to grade students purely on subjective teacher assessments and coursework.
Yeah. Expected
And
grades.
and that changed everything. Both boys and girls got better grades, by the way, but girls went way higher. So there's like a girl bonus where if we're
Wow.
looking at subjective teacher assessments, girls do way better. If we're looking at objective exam results, boys and girls are kind of similar. And there's loads of examples of why are these boys, there's a boy and a girl doing equally well in an exam, but when it comes to teacher assessments, she's way ahead. And like I said, a lot of it's down to these non-cognitive abilities. And I don't think it's right to call it a non-cognitive ability or bad behavior. I think it's better seen as a naughty boy. That's something I see in myself because I did dread from school. I came out of like D's, all D's. And every year my parents would sit me down on my bed after parents' evening and be, oh, you're a bright boy, George, and you work really, you should apply yourself more, but you just, you got to behave better and listen to what your teachers and not once did they consider maybe school is failing George. It was always George is failing school. And
Yeah.
I think I was failed by school.
Unfortunately, that's the route we're stuck to go down. And the only option is to change ourselves unless we can somehow change the way the school system works.
Well, I
but
think they should. I mean, there's loads to it.
yeah,
There's loads of different theories to education. There's another theory where boys have a delayed cognitive development than girls. I mean, people talk about girls mature faster. There's actually some science to that. And people like Richard Reeves argue we should be redshirting boys, which means we should be delaying a boy's school so he starts a year later than girls. I mean, I don't think that's a great solution.
right.
Because I don't think you're looking at
So you'd
the
have
problem. Boys start at
boys,
5, girls start
yeah,
at 4. I just think
in the
you
same
just-
year, you'd have a year difference between the two.
I just don't think you do that for any other group that's behind in school. I don't think that's addressing the problem. Like you're punishing the boys rather than changing the way we educate boys. I mean, some people
'cause
talk
it becomes
about.
a bit of an embarrassment thing then as well. It's almost as if you've been held back a year, isn't it?
Well, you're just missing a year of your life, aren't you?
Well,
like
yeah,
your
there's
whole
that as well.
career starts a year later, and I don't think that's. I understand why he's coming at it from that angle, but I don't think it's right. I don't think it's going to catch on. And I'd rather just change the way we educate boys that's more in line with their interests, more kinespacial learning, more practical exercises, that sort of thing. And then more exams, I guess, for grading. And more male teachers, of course.
Yeah, definitely. So just moving across into the dating world then. We've spoke about the toxic masculinity trend. What's your opinion on the ick trend on dating? Because I feel like dating in general has moved to a very sort of gambling addiction where it's the dopamine that gets you through, similar to scrolling on Instagram or TikTok. It's always wondering what the next thing is coming up. And I don't think the ick trend is helping people at all. Because one of the girls that come on the hikes with us, she has an ick list in her phone, which is, I think it was 57 icks long. Quite a lot of them are jokey, like it's her and a mate having a laugh. But at the same time, it's a very common thing amongst the girls to have these icks. And I think there's probably some men out there that do, but I'm mainly seeing it driven by women.
I mean, I'm probably in trouble with telling this, but I literally 5 minutes before this podcast was talking to my girlfriend, and she was talking about her friend who'd been on a date, and it went really well. But the thing she didn't like about him is like he was wearing a woolly hat. I was like, okay. I mean, it has to be a pretty bad woolly hat to ruin the date. But it looked like but that happens a lot. I mean, the ick thing is odd. I mean, I'm grateful that I'm not in a dating pool and I don't have to expose myself to that sort of stuff. I'm sure I've got lots of icks. Like, you can imagine what it was like for me to be dating. I mean, I'm seen as some sort of mega incel king, Z-list Jordan Peterson, to name a few things I've been called. Which is great, because it means I self-select into finding a woman that's actually very headstrong and thoughtful and intelligent. But I'm just grateful that's just not part of my life. I think it's like, I mean, I would love to know what's on the ick list. I know there's that Instagram page where it's like the ick list.
I actually got a screenshot of
read
that.
Oh my God, these are real icks.
Yeah, these are icks that I've been sent.
Well, prepare to find yourself alone then.
So, I'll go through a couple of them. So, gym selfies, warming up before a run.
What?
Yeah.
That's good.
Falling asleep in a taxi after a night out.
Jesus.
Having a lollipop on a night out.
Okay.
Baths with no bubbles.
But there's no point having a bath unless there's bubbles in it. Wait, what? No bubbles is the ick. I mean, you got to have bubbles.
Yeah, having no bubbles in the bath is an ick.
Oh.
Applying Factor 50 sun cream for the UK.
Okay.
Pushing a pull door. Ordering pink gins. Why can't a man have a pink gin?
I fucking love a pink gin. That is what I have. And I ordered it in the most, well, I actually got my girlfriend to order it to me because I was too scared. But it was in the most laddie working man's pub, surrounded by guys all drinking pints. And I was like, one pink gin and lemonade for me. I fucking love it. It's so much more refreshing. Like, I reckon most guys would prefer it if we really... In the summer. Yeah, it's so much better. Like a pint after pint of beer. No thanks. Pink gin and lemonade.
Off with a couple of pink gins, yeah.
Fuck yeah. I love it. Yeah, I
and
mean, I'm
two
fully
last ones, which are not being able to swim or able to ride a bike.
I mean...
Yeah. I'm glad I'm not in that space.
I just...
But,
just what is she... What is this? Is this like a real thing, a real set of criteria she has, or is this just? Like
I don't know. I think quite a lot of them are like dates that she's been on and just things that she's found funny. So like her and a mate have sat there after dates they've been on, and sort of came up with this thing that of icked them out, and it is now 57 icks long.
I mean, if there were such a thing as toxic femininity, you'd put that on
Yeah, I
the
think I
on the
found
list.
it. Yeah.
I mean, that is that sort of thing. I mean, the only ick I have are people that make ick lists. I would say. I just think that's
Yeah.
kind of lame.
But by doing that, you've made an ick list.
Damn! Oh wow, you got me there. Fuck! All right, damn! I didn't thought that's wow. That's such a paradox.
Yeah.
All right, fine.
Come full circle.
All right. I'm not sure if there's a list, if it's just one thing on it, but yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, what constitutes a list?
Don't know. That's a conversation for another day. But
yeah,
I think it's just grim. I think it represents a list of requirements that are very difficult to meet. The thing is, this conversation of dating standards where you have some sort of graph around hypergamy, and then you'll see a TikTok video where someone's like, what's the minimum salary you'd want in a man? And you get a bunch of these
it's like £1 million.
belligerent women being like 50
yeah.
million, 200,000, whatever. I don't think that's a true portrayal of women. I think that's a bit like the Andrew Tate thing where we're hyper-fixated on a small minority of women. I don't think women are like that at all. So I'm always very hesitant to enter into the space. But I do think there is a conversation to be had where it's very difficult for a man to earn that sort of solo breadwinner money. Like, again, we're comparing men to that 1950s sitcom dad who, goes to work in the morning and pays for everything and he can support a whole family on his own. And that's lovely in the 1950s. But since then, women have entered the workplace, rightly so. And that means that it's harder for anyone to earn that money on their own because we're basically sharing it between two incomes. So although I don't want to frame it in the TikTok ick list language, there is definitely a conversation where we need to value men for, like we said earlier, more than just their ability to earn money. That includes within dating standards. That includes within things like height. I think the whole dating up literally is a bit of an odd one. And I think we need to start valuing men for other things.
Like, well, it's interesting you say that. I've seen. Have you seen the female delusion calculator?
No.
So I've seen a few clips online. There's this podcast in America, and they tend to get like a group of girls around, and they're all asked to rate themselves out of 10, how they see themselves, and they're all like 9s and 10s, and not to be offensive, but quite a lot of them aren't. It's subjective at the end of the day. But then they're asked what their ideal man is, and it's like, I want them to be 6 foot whatever, I want them to earn 6 figures, da 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 da. And now there's a website called the Female Delusion Calculator. So basically what you can do as a woman is go in there, say it's all based on your height, age, race, and salary, and it'll give you a probability that that man exists in America.
Okay.
So you can see how delusional you're being.
I mean, the height thing is, like, I'm not sure what percentage of men are over 6 foot, but it's not a very large percentage, and then even less.
I'm 6'4", and I believe I'm in the top 4% of people height-wise.
We're way off topic now, but I'm 6'2", and I remember when I was at Loughborough Uni elite athletes gym, I was surrounded by so many like big men, and I found out that to be considered exceptionally tall, I think you have to be like 193 centimeters. I'm about 2 centimeters off, so I was annoyed that I'm not
194.
Yeah, well done, exceptionally tall, officially. And I was just like, I'm so annoyed I'm not actually. Yeah, well, it's only a metaphorical one, but yeah, it's sad how we value men on their height, not in dating, but also like just we seem to think tall men are more competent. Like it's famous, people famously say it's always a taller president that wins the election because so many people just think they're more competent, which is often, obviously, it's always a man who wins. And also you're more likely to get pay rises, you're more likely to get paid more. And cumulatively, it adds up to like hundreds of thousands of pounds, like per inch, I think, over a whole lifetime.
I've always been told this at work for when I'm going into meetings or to interviews is use my height and presence because it will help you get the job, basically.
Well, none of it doesn't count for anything on a podcast, though. You're just head and shoulders here.
Well, exactly.
But it's true. Like, I mean, and then you have like these horrible things like limb lengthening surgeries, which so many men are doing now. Originally, that was supposed to treat a condition if one leg is shorter than the other, but now a lot of men are doing it for sort of aesthetic reasons. They just want to be taller, and it just what they do is they basically break your femurs
seen it. It's
or
horrible,
tibia and
isn't it?
fibia. They insert titanium rods inside of your bones. It's so painful. And then over the course of maybe 6 months, it slowly extends and your bones get
Yeah.
longer. And that's so,
They have like a crank on the side, don't they, to keep separating it, I think.
yeah, I
Something.
mean, it's like a bit like braces where you have it in your hand and then
Yeah.
slowly, and then I think every few weeks you probably go and they make it, and it's just so sad that
Surely
so
the
many men are doing
proportions
it.
are off, though, I always think.
Yeah.
Because
What, like
if
legs
I
are
was to just
disproportionate?
randomly add like 6 inches to my legs, my torso's going to look really short and I'm going to have really long legs.
I don't know. I mean, I think 6 inches is probably the maximum. You
Yeah,
can
maybe
add.
not.
I don't
Yeah,
think
yeah.
it's like an endless amount of height. Otherwise, you'd end up like some sort of Mr. Men character.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's just sad that men are doing that when they're perfectly fine as they are. And the reason
Yeah.
they do it is because we seem to think tall men are more valuable, more dateable, more worthy of pay rises and whatever else, and being elected. And
Yeah.
not being on the ick list, I imagine.
Hopefully not. But yeah, I think that's a nice place to round up. George, thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
It's been a pleasure, George. I'd love to do it again.
Yes, definitely. Where can everyone find you and what should we look out for coming up with your content soon?
Well, you can find me on TheTinMen on Instagram. So TheTinMen, all one word. Moving more onto YouTube, doing more podcasts. I've got a series of 6 podcasts coming out of various world-leading experts in sexual violence, domestic violence, men's health, male suicide, and education, that sort of thing. And that's on YouTube, the Tin Men blog, and then various social media platforms. But yeah, mainly the Tin Men on Instagram. I post there 3 times a week.
Link in the description.
Thank you. That'd be excellent.
Thank you very much again for coming on, George.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you.
If you've enjoyed this one, drop a like. If you're new, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.